on tonight's broadcast, providing updates with the Crowley case. Today is July 17th, 2019. How are you doing today, Greg?
I'm doing awesome.
And how is Sophia doing?
I'm doing great. How's everybody else?
Very good.
It's summertime.
Very good.
It better be good for everybody.
Yeah. and Catherine, are you there?
Hi, I'm here.
Very good. Well, we haven't had a show or a discussion in a while, and we wanted to bring everyone up to speed. It's the end of July, so the update from the Crowley case from the private investigator was done. He came to his conclusion on May 30th, and for those listening, he was the person that I hired to take a look at the case, investigate the case. Someone who didn't know anything about the case, and then he came to his conclusion, basically agreeing with the Apple Valley Police Department, agreeing with the official narrative, going so far as to saying they did a tremendous job and did immaculate work and very good attention to detail. So I had sent off my notes of just today, actually. I finally sent off my notes that I accumulated of where I wanted clarification with Kenneth Maines, and so that was 15 items of clarification that I wanted to make sure we're on the same page, where he either described something that wasn't how we saw it, or he was analyzing something else and not on point from what we were focusing on. And then it followed up with 12 bullet points of questions, bullet points that I mentioned to him of things that I thought were pertinent to the case that he did not bring up at all in his investigation review. And so Kenneth will be responding back here, hopefully here within this week, and even if it's week to 10 days, it'll get us to the end of July to at least have an answer back from Kenneth to get his thoughts on some of these things. One option would be that I would call him and discuss his clarifications there over the phone or via email, or even do a conference call interview process to be recorded as a broadcast. But look for that in the upcoming days. And then we've had, another person come forward. They didn't want to provide their name yet, but an ex-girlfriend of Joseph Seaton came forward and mentioned that's David Crowley's mentor or sergeant in the U.S. military or something to that effect. I'm not sure what, but she came forward and said that she was a girlfriend of his at the time while he was living in Minneapolis. And the very interesting thing there is that if you look at his background, he grew up and basically was in Texas for many years, including in Harker Heights, Texas, about the same time in 2009 and 2010 that David was there and Comel was there. And then he moved to Minneapolis around the same time as the Gray State and David Crowley, and then has since left after the Gray State ended and the murders, and now is living back down in Texas near Austin. So it raises a couple of red flags there, and I'd like your guys' input as well. He was down in that area, moved up here, didn't really have friends or family, but was working on the project, and then moved out to Seattle to live with a couple of roommates for a few years, and now he's back down in Texas. So once again, we get another strange person in the mix, and the reason Joseph Seaton jumps out for me is that he's another one that the story really didn't match up. More questions were raised than answers when he was mentioned in that documentary, and it seems like another person that was inserted into this fiasco, much like how Sean Wright or Eric Sayward kind of were implanted into this or infiltrated into this group or into this movement, and then slithered away once this whole thing unfolded. And so he's down there now in Texas. Now we know Danny August Mason is in Texas, down in Austin, along with Joe Biggs. And Danny August Mason was the person who was going to try to get that script, start his new company, get a trademark, and then move forward with Gray State Universe LLC. And he was busy creating that 4 months after the bodies were discovered. So Joseph Seaton is down there. The girlfriend said he was very odd, very strange, and had a bunch of the same kind of background and strange stories as both Eric Sayward and Sean Wright. So this is another individual that really doesn't have much of a background, but yet has large stories of what he has all done and all accomplished in his career. And she left and broke it off with him when she realized that not all was what it was meant to be. The interesting thing is with this case is that she did attend that party with him as they were dating at the time in August of 2014, when Randy's birthday party was at the Crowley home in Apple Valley, Minnesota, which means that she was there. She saw the interaction with David and Kamel and Randy, the family, the friends, and how everything was going, and was very interested. So hopefully we'll hear more from her. But that's all I've got from the Crowley case as far as recent updates. Where should we start? Anyway, is there any comments on those first two articles, Catherine?
Why am I going first?
I just picked your name out of the hat.
I know you're. Sophia, you go first. I know, right? I just really don't know what.
Yeah.
You know, the whole thing is, and I know I always get everybody in trouble because I say what I think, and there is no filter. So I am, as far as having the investigator respond to your questions, I'm really looking forward to see if he is going to redeem himself. We already knew what the Apple Valley Police Department said, and I wanted an actual investigation. But it wasn't my money; it was your money. But still, it was like it would have been nice to have an actual investigation and not just a rehashing of what was written. However, I do want to say one thing: there is I have to see whose writing this is. I probably passed up the page now. Oh, I did. On one of the police officers, in his writing on his handwritten notes, he actually was very thorough. And I think Bone actually wrote some pretty thorough stuff as well. Some of the other officers was just, they just wrote, well, I was there, I took a picture. It wasn't helpful at all. But there were a couple of the officers who were really very detailed in what they stated. And that's all I have to say.
Yes.
Right
How about
now.
you, Sophia?
I am looking forward to actually hearing some responses to the questions that we had, whereas the very first report didn't have a lot of answers. Some of it was, I disagree. I personally, you paid $7,000. There should be more than an I disagree. There should be an in-depth answer to why he disagrees. So I would like to see more to his answers, more thought put into it. Okay, tell us why you disagree.
Yeah, I think, Sophia, that's a good point. And to be able to have him on a show and do a broadcast like that, I think would be very good. Or even maybe even have callers call in and do it a live broadcast or a live stream or something to that effect. I'll see if he's open to that. But we have to keep in mind that he does say when he does these investigations that they are not close-ended, they are open-ended. Anything that comes up along the way, he is interested in hearing and following up and pursuing. So hopefully, if we can just keep a good relationship here over the next few months and see what he has to say, remember, we're not trying to convince anybody here, but I think the clarification is just that if he can just, I guess, get on the same page as what we're looking for. Like Catherine said, we weren't looking for someone to rehash the already done report. We were looking for someone to take in all of the further evidence that we've gained over the last 4 years and put that together in a comprehensive investigation summary to come to his own conclusion. And that I don't know if it was necessarily done that way. There were several references to David not having a deal, and he was despondent. and not happy about its financial situation. When that was one of the best the interviews that I was able to do on this case was with Mike Boggio III, the actual president of MEG, saying on the record that there was a deal. There never was not a deal. It was never canceled. It was worth a lot of money, and they were just hashing out the small details. So that video I delivered to him specifically to say, please watch this. This is an actual interview, and then some of the comments on his investigative report was alluding to the fact that David didn't have a deal and was kind of down in the dumps about the prospects of this whole thing. So it leads me to wonder how much work was actually done in some of that.
And
anything
even
else?
David even makes a reference to the miniseries in his email to Jason Allen in December. So that even backs up what what the Mikes had told you.
Yes, he said he was asking Jason Allen. That was in December, asking for him to be the executive producer of this, and asking if he wanted to do that. And Jason Allen did, respond back and write back. Too bad it was too late, and David Crowley never got it, but he was interested in that, and they were on good terms, and they were moving forward with these big plans. So. Like that too. I'm not sure if he saw the exchange between Jason Allen and some of those other things. One of my bullet points is that he didn't mention was the email back and forth between Danny August Mason and David Crowley in those months of October, November, and December. David going as far as setting a deadline, saying you need to do something with that legal paperwork, with the releasing your rights, and the deadline will be December 16th. I'm moving forward without you. If not, then I'll consider you having a minor spot in maybe possibly as an actor, but the big stuff is out the window. I can't deal with this month after month after month without him responding. And then Danny August Mason says, I got to run it past my attorney. Well, he had 3 months to do that. So. Some of those, the exchange there is very powerful between those two that came out of those recent revelations with the Gmail account messages. So that is powerful stuff as far as proving and showing that there was animosity and I think people were getting anxious. That the time was running. Danny August Mason was on the clock. He knew that his time was running out, and with looking for someone who has the most to gain, you also have to look at who's got the most to lose. Danny August Mason in this entire scenario had the most to gain, and also had the most to lose. So that would be your number one suspect in any situation like that. And he was the one going back and forth on these emails, and the deadline was set, and a week later the Crowleys were killed. So it really leads that to look further into to scrutinize some of those things. Danny Crowley, just for the newer listeners out there, was the one who went on record to the investigators to say that he had nothing more than was an actor in this production. He was nothing more than an actor, had no vested interest from a business standpoint, and had nothing to gain as an owner. So that was an outright lie. Why would you lie to the investigators? And so it's questions like that I don't know if Kenneth Maines looked into too heavily. The death of David's mother, the $50,000 cash withdrawal in the month of October by allegedly Dan Crowley Sr. when he was out of the country that he told police. We've got the Chris Klein telling detectives that they missed a bullet hole in the ceiling, and they get over there finally in February of 2015 and do find a bullet hole in the ceiling. But we've got problems with who was all in the house at what time, and were the cleaners there? Were the cleaners done yet? Did the cleaners complete their job? Why were they in the house? And so a whole load of questions like that.
And
Greg,
the question I would really, I'm sorry, can I interrupt here real quick? Sorry, Greg. But what I'm hoping, too, is that he will at least address the blunt force trauma, the multiple blunt force trauma. It's so obvious on that skull piece. And it's like, why is that always skimmed, not even talked about, it's not even looked at, when that right there shows that David was murdered? I want him to
Yeah,
explain it.
yep, that's in my that's in one of the bullet points of what he did not address at all in his investigation. That piece of skull, and for the listeners out there, there's only one sizable piece of skull left in that room. There
Mm-hmm.
were small little bone fragments, but the largest piece of skull that you can see was attributable to David, and so after eliminating the fact that it was Comel or Ranya's, we know that it was David. So if David's head was blown apart and something that did not relate to a gunshot but had hex imprints over 13 times on that flat piece of skull from a blunt force instrument, you can safely rule out that David didn't do it. And so we already know that. So the question is, why didn't he address it? That's the question.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Catherine. Anything else on that one?
No, that was it. I'm glad you included that because I really want to hear. I want him to actually investigate that, not take our word for it, not take the police officer's report's word for it, but he needs to do an independent investigation into that skull piece.
Yeah, and I just thought of another note that I had too. Is one of his answers, Kenneth Main's answers on the questions, was that we know that David received marijuana on December 19th because he went to Chris Peck's house to receive it. And he says that that's pretty obviously because David sent a text that morning saying to Chris Peck, asking him, do you have any? Chris Peck was the drug dealer, his recreational drug use dealer for David Crowley, allegedly.
Mm-hmm.
But keep in mind, and what I pointed out on the notes, is that according to the phone records, which we received via a FOIA request, phone records and text records, it's easy enough to validate those things, and I think that detectives, that's part of their job, is to validate or confirm or deny these things that people say, and I don't think Kenneth Maines did that either, because we looked into those records on December 19th. There was no text from David Crowley's phone being sent or received that day at all. And so if there was no text on the 19th asking for weed, did David Crowley send a text at all asking for weed? Did David Crowley and Comel even drive to Minneapolis to pick up the weed? Was there a weed purchase at all? And so it really opens those questions, and that's the type of questions that we need, is for someone to vet this stuff, to someone to go through and verify and confirm or deny that the statements actually took place. And so
correct.
We know that
because
David Crowley did not send a text on the 19th, so it really opens up a lot of other doors. Why did Chris Peck now say that he did, and in fact David and Comel came to his house to pick it up before picking up Rania at school on the final day of school before the Christmas break? That opens up many doors. Chris Peck was involved in a couple other suspicious things, and that's just another thing there that we can add to the mix. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that we were talking about this via email earlier, and it's like everyone who said they had contact with David and David contacted them is not supported by the phone records and the evidence that the police used to make their determination. This isn't stuff just we're pulling out of thin air. This is stuff we received from the police department that they used, that they said proved to them, helped prove their case. And the evidence does not support that claim at all.
And the important things to note there, Catherine, thanks for bringing that up, is the Dan Crowley Sr. communication, whether it's phone calls or texts, that did not take place with David.
Correct.
Between David Crowley and his father, Dan Crowley Sr., and David's brother, Dan Crowley Jr., those texts and those phone calls did not take place. So
correct.
The question here is, we've already got now three people, Dan Sr., Dan Jr., and Chris Peck, saying things that was later turned out to be, I'm going to say, cannot be supported by evidence. I'll put it that way. I'm not
Yes.
going to say they're lying. I'm just going to say I can't find any place that'll support evidence to support any of that stuff took place. So we've really got problems here, and that's the investigator's job is to, for instance, you go to a murder scene and you ask your suspect where was he that day, and he gives you an alibi. You have got to vet it. You have got to confirm or deny the alibi is even correct.
Yep.
My point here is, did the Apple Valley detectives do any kind of vetting on any of this stuff? We did it, and we're just armchair investigators. So the question is, if they didn't, did they not do their job, or did they not do something on purpose? But why all the lying going on is the main question behind all of this. Greg, what are your thoughts?
Wow, you guys covered a lot of ground.
I'm sorry.
I think you covered. Okay, well, let me go back a few things here. Let's go back a few steps here. I'd like to go back to Seaton. I'm very curious to hear more about Joseph Seaton. I know that we had his rank too, or I don't know if it was his rank, but I forget what he said, what his title was in Eric Nelson's film. But I do remember he had some type of title. Sophia, I think I sent it to you. Hopefully, I sent it to you. I don't know if you still have it or not, but
I should have it.
Okay.
I think I still have it.
Maybe you can, because it was a weird title. I thought it was a title, but it wasn't a title. I think it just says like David's friend or something like that. But I do remember seeing it somewhere. Maybe because they did two different versions of it. Maybe they changed it or something. I don't know. But yeah, he's a very curious person. As far as the private eye, my biggest thing. Two biggest things. I mean, even if he discounts everything else, Dan, I don't see how he didn't want to know more about this motive, the whole Hollywood deal that was going on, that David was actually working on. I thought he would focus more on that, and especially when you read the 94 pages, it makes it sound like David's deal is dying, right? Everything is coming crashing down. His world is crashing down, so he's going to kill himself and kill his family. So, but for me, the biggest problem that I have with Kenneth Maines is item 57, is his answer about item 57. That really bothers me. It really bothers me that he would just think that this happens more often than not, or it happens a lot, I think. Whatever he said. To me, I was very shocked by that answer. So I hope he can, I'm hoping at some point maybe he can follow up on that too. Doing a live show or something like that would be really good. He might feel pressured, he might feel like it's a bunch of people jumping on him, blah, 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 because he knows that, we don't believe that David Crowley is guilty. We don't believe that anybody can prove David Crowley is guilty. I don't see how he believes. How does Kenneth Maine think that anybody could prove David Crowley guilty? And maybe he can clarify that answer, and maybe that'll help me try to understand where he's coming from, because this guy does know what he's talking about.
Another good way to put this, Greg, and I specify this to people when they have a hard time talking about the proof, is that, and we've brought this up before, is if David was alive and was standing before a jury, and this whole thing went to trial, would the evidence support him, or would there be enough reasonable doubt to be acquitted? And I think everyone who's looked at this case from a trial perspective, is if he was sitting there in the docket, in the defendant's chair, I think everyone would say there's not enough proof to prove that he did this. There is huge reasonable doubt on all across the spectrum. So you'd have to find him not guilty. So if you find him not guilty on the trial because he's still alive because of the reasonable doubt, why is it now so easy because he's dead just to rule that he is guilty? I think it's very easy for people to say, well, obviously a few things point to the fact that he did it. But if you switch it around, turn it on its head, and say, if David Crowley was in a court of law being tried for this with his lawyers against the other side lawyers, there's no way he'd be found guilty. So there's the difference. The detectives in the Apple Valley group quickly came to the conclusion that David did this, but I would like to ask them too. If this was a criminal case, you'd have to agree that there's no way you'd find someone guilty with this reasonable doubt. And that's one thing I did not ask Kenneth Maines, and I'd like to do that, just to spin that topic and put it that way. Say, with your years of background in your investigation and homicide and cold cases, there would be no way you'd convict a David Crowley for this, because there's just no evidence that points in that direction. So I didn't ask him, but I will do that.
Nice. The other thing is about Chris Peck. What I want to know about the whole Chris Peck thing, because you guys have brought up some really great points that just makes me feel like, wait a minute, okay, how do the cops tie this phone call to Chris Peck then? Like, where did that come from? Obviously it came from somebody. It came from somewhere. They got some type of a lead that said, hey, contact Chris Peck, because we have these text messages about do you have any, all of that came from somewhere. So I'm very curious to hear what it is.
I agree with that, because if the officer there speaking with him would have to say, show me your phone to see this text so I could visually see it, that'd be the first thing, right?
Right.
You'd want to visually see it, and that would go back to the fact that text did come through from somebody, not David, but did that text come through? Do you have any? And if he took a screenshot of it and sent it to the police and says, here it is. But the question is, did it come from David's number, or did it come from someone else, and you change that contact number to David Crowley, and then you bring it up for police and say, see, look at this text that I received from David Crowley. Well, at the same time, you're not able to see that phone number behind it. My question to the detectives are, when they looked at that evidence, assuming they saw the screenshot or the actual phone itself, was it from that phone number of David Crowley? It may have said his name. Anyone could change that, the contact list, to make it show up as a recent text message from somebody. Yeah. But the question is, how down the road research did they get to proving that took place?
Yeah, exactly, because the phone records that they gave us, that they said, meaning the Apple Valley Police Department, said that they used to verify what was going on, those same exact phone records do not support Chris Peck and his comments at all. Now, I agree with you. We can't say he's lying, but we can definitely say the evidence does not support his statement, because there is nothing in the phone records that even shows any communication between David and Chris Peck at that time frame at all.
Well, not only that, but the other case that I received from Apple Valley, and it was investigated by the same detectives, they took photos of text messages sent back and forth from the victim and a friend. And on the audio of him having a discussion with the victim's friend, you can even hear him taking the photo. So there's proof. And Apple Valley goes as far to show emails and screenshots from Kamel's emails and Facebook, and from David's emails and Facebook. Where is the proof that this message even took place?
Exactly.
Good point, Sophia. And for the listeners out there, mention to the listeners that you were doing what now? You were looking up a similar case also that Apple Valley did, and pulled a FOIA request just to see, for comparison purposes, how they to compare and contrast how they do things. Is that what you were attempting there?
Yes, and there was a text message exchange between the victim and his friend the night before the murder-suicide occurred. And in that particular case, the police took a photo of the friend's phone where the email exchange had, or the text message exchange had happened. So they had it for their records. And
so
then they continued on. Oh, go
Okay,
ahead.
so their common practice, it sounds like their standard operating procedure is to do that when there's correspondence on a phone via text to get pictures or snapshots of that. So the question now relates back to why did they go out of sequence or out of bounds on this Crowley case and treat it differently? Correct?
Correct.
Very good point. Very, very interesting. And we don't know and we don't know yet if they visited Peck's house or they just contacted him, or did they go there, or did they meet in person, or did Chris Peck come to the station? But that's the question. How did they see, or better yet, how did they verify that that text came in? Um, I'm hoping they didn't just take his word for it, but if they did verify it, did it track back to that phone number? And we already know the answer to that. Is that it's no. We've got the AT&T cell phone numbers for David Crowley. That text did not take place. There was no text on December 19th.
Correct.
And so it really opens up a can of worms, because if he was not asking for marijuana, the next story that at 1 o'clock they went and picked it up, and then they picked up Rania at 3 p.m. And so that all helps push a certain narrative: asking for the marijuana, smoking the marijuana, killing the kids because you're killing the family because you're allegedly potentially high or hallucinating. They're pushing this whole marijuana angle, and Chris Peck was one of the key people in pushing that narrative. That would be my question for Kenneth Maines: is how would you solidify anything that he said was true for Chris Peck?
And just to be clear, there aren't any texts from Chris Peck at all in December. The last text message exchange happened November 16th, I believe. Do you seem to remember that, Catherine, that date?
Yeah, it's either the 16th or the 18th. I'd have to pull it up. But yes, there were no texts between them in December at all.
Okay, do you?
And I don't even know if there's a phone call between them.
Is it possible that that's when the text happened, and then David got the weed 1 month later?
I don't think so. Because
There's no follow-up.
Yeah, he clearly states that I'm trying to
forth, right?
file. Yeah, he clearly states that it was done in December. They're all trying to follow this timeline to prove that David did, killed them, and it all happened at this time, because see, all of this, justifies it, when in fact it's not true. I'm trying to pull up the phone logs right now. It's like, come on, computer. Okay, this is going to take me a minute, so you guys can go on, and I'll come back and revisit it once I get it pulled up.
So on the mobile cell phone usage, I've got the AT&T record pulled up here for David's phone. This isn't someone else's number. This is David's, and it is cell phone texts originating and terminating. And in the month of December, there's only 3 line items: 75, 76, and 77. First one was the 16th of December. That was the deadline David gave to Danny Mason to say we need to move forward with this. And I don't know if that's who texted him, but that text came in on the 16th. The next day was the 17th. This is a Tuesday now and a Wednesday. Nothing was the Thursday, and nothing on the 19th, which was that Friday. And then the last final text on David's phone in December was the 24th, which was Christmas Eve. A text came in at about 10:30 maybe, 10:30 p.m. So he didn't send a text at all in the month of December. All the 3 that came in, there was only 3, all came in to David. He didn't respond or send any out. But his phone received 3 texts during that entire month.
Correct.
So the question is, how did investigators even tie that story, I'll call it, from Chris Peck? How did they verify or vet that what I call alibi is even correct?
Right, because in the 94 pages on page 28, it clearly says that the last time that Chris Peck saw him was on December 19th, 2014, around 1 p.m. So it is a big question, and I think it's definitely a big one that needs to be followed up on, based on those phone records. It's yeah.
Yeah, and the only text between Chris Peck to David, and I don't even show David texting him. It was something that Chris Peck initiated the call, or text. I'm sorry, excuse me. From the months of October, November, and December was one time, and that was on November 12th at 5:19 in the afternoon.
Okay, so they're told about this on January 19th, 2015. This is when the cops learn about this Chris Peck call. Then they're doing whatever, blah blah blah. They don't get the phone records until much later. So, I mean, maybe they figured there was no need to go back and check it. But um, I I think you guys have proven that there really is. And this
I
goes.
just want to.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say this
I
just
just want to
goes.
jump in. I
This,
found it here. That
there, go ahead, Dan.
it was Detective Shane Klokanos had given Tommy Booth information about a text message that was sent from David Crowley's phone to a phone number of blank, which belonged to Christopher Peck. So this came from Klokanos. And
Right. So where did he
Klokanos
get
came
that?
to Tommy Booth and says, "Look what I've got. I've got some text message here." And this was Tommy Booth then on the 19th of January of 2015 contacted Mr. Peck to confirm with him about the questions concerning the text.
And yet it
And
is not supported by the phone records.
So Klokanos, that guy is
so
the
this
one
is
we need to
Klokanos
talk.
going out of his way to tell Tommy Booth information that I don't have anything to support where that's coming from. And I think Klokanos was the one working with the Dakota County Electronic Crimes Unit. And maybe he was a member of that unit, but that would make sense because that's phone, that's text, that's electronic, information there. Now, then again, the AT&T phone records didn't come out till I think February of 2015, and so this was on the 19th. So Klokanos already knew about texts on the 19th, and we didn't get information back from AT&T records concerning any kind of phones, text activity until February. Is that correct? And I'm kind of confused there. I remember seeing that the AT&T records took some time to come. But would that make? Oh, I got it up here. Hold on one second.
In February? Or might have been.
Yeah, because I have no idea what was said.
February 18th of 2015 is when AT&T looks like to me that they ran the report to pull all the data and then gave it to police. So this was February 18th when I'm showing my records from AT&T that David didn't make a text. How would Shane Klokanos know on January 19th, the month before, of anything even taking place? So that I just stumbled upon now. I don't know how that could have taken place, but
Yeah, you're right. I'm looking at that too. And yeah, they ran the reports on February 18th. Interesting.
so that would be nice to get if we were to be able to contact Shane Klokanos and have him come forward with explaining how that kind of stuff takes place. That would be nice because the records I'm looking at looks like the police didn't even get it till the following month. But Klokanos comes running into Tommy Booth, raising his hand with papers in his hand, saying, "Look what I got! Look what I got!"
Right.
And I don't know if that's even verifiable.
So this might be something that they actually missed. This might be new information that they keep telling us unless there's something new, they don't even want to talk to us or whatever. This is new because obviously they didn't catch this, or if they did, then they can say no, this isn't new. Then that would show that they knew that these phone records don't show that Chris Peck and David Crowley talked during that time. So
And the search warrants only showed 2 of the cell phones being removed from the house. The police did ask for 4 numbers
correct.
to
Right.
from AT&T that only 2 cell phones were removed. So the whole theory of a burner phone is just not likely.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we all think about, right? I mean, obviously, it's like,
Hmm.
well, how do you make sense of anything? So you got to play it out.
Of
But
course.
yeah. But how likely? I think it's highly unlikely. But it's not impossible either. It's still not impossible.
Well, the police didn't have even a search warrant to get text messages for that phone, and they don't have it in their possession because it wasn't taken out of the house. So where are they still getting this information?
Right.
I think by the 19th they may have had it at that point, Sophia, right? 2 days later?
Had what information? I'm sorry.
They had the search warrants and everything to remove the stuff from the house, I think, already at that point.
Hmm. Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Right. So they were like, okay, we're looking for everything, anything in that house. Yeah. But
And I don't know if they went to, Chris Peck is the one that, he's also the one who didn't provide his address, his residential address to police. All that's given is a P.O. box. And he's the one providing this information. So Peck's story is not credible at this point. But my question now would be Shane Klokonos. How did this story originate about this nonsense?
that's right. And then didn't you also say that Peck like claimed that he was somewhere and he wasn't? Right? There were some
Okay, that's
conflicting dates.
a very good point. We have debunked that. His comment to police was that he remembers the 19th because that was when David was on his way home, because he remembers saying have a good break because he was leaving in 2 days. Christopher Peck was to go visit his mother in Iowa, and the mother in Iowa would have been the 21st, and to visit her. And we had noticed on his Facebook page that he had checked in on Facebook, checked in at a location in Minneapolis, saying that he was working on a project in Minneapolis for some production company. And what that was probably the evening of the 19th, all day of the 20th, and for the most part of the 21st, he must have been working on that production. And then left later that night to visit, ultimately, his mother on the 21st. So that does jive. He was in Minneapolis that weekend, but he visited his mother on the 21st, and I believe that to be true.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. Yeah. Well, I think at some point we should also talk about what does anybody else have any other things they want to bring up? Any pressing issues here?
Well, were we going to talk about item 57?
Yes. Shall we get into that? To the
I think
never-ending,
so.
never-ending topic of item 57. I mean, where do you want to start? Um, you could start anywhere with that one. Sophia sent me a bunch of photos here regarding item
Why don't we
57. Go ahead.
Why don't we start with the email or the exchange between Mason North
Oh, yes.
and
Let's start there.
Justice for David Crowley's?
Let me see if I can make this bigger here. Alright, there we go. January 28th, 2015. This is Hendricks, Mason Hendricks. He says, I was there. He was there with me. Dan, can you put this into proper context before I start reading?
Yes. So Mason, I think there was some. This is on the Justice for David Crowley of Gray State Facebook group, is it, or page? And so this was taking. This was I think. I was added as an editor on this page, but this wasn't my page. Mine is the Justice for David Crowley and Family. And so I was handling both pages at this point. So Mason was going back and forth as far as saying who had access to the house. We were trying to speculate who was in and out of that house and when. And so he came on this date, January 20th, to try to clarify. And so the questions were, was he there? For those who can't see the screen here, it says, Mason says that he was there with me, as well as, we're talking about Chris Klein now. He was there with me, as well as with Danny August Mason and Dan Crowley Jr., and David's best friend, Adam Shambor. We had the code to the lockbox. We were cleaning up the house and organizing stuff for the families so they didn't have to. He and I found the hole in the ceiling and went up to the attic to see if anything up there needs to be brought down.
Like a bullet?
God, you guys suck at being detectives. And so this is the 28th. This was 11 days after the murder. And so they were saying that we already had access to get into the house. In fact, we used the code of the lockbox to get in. And now Mason here is claiming that it was Danny Jr., Danny Mason Hendricks, this is, and Adam Shambor were in the house, and Chris Klein. So those were the five. 5 people in the house. Remember, Chris Klein in the police testimony says he gained access to the house was in the house with Dan Crowley Sr. when he went in there. Now, we don't see Dan Crowley Sr. here at all. In fact, all we say is these guys came in because they had access to the code of the lockbox, nothing to do with Dan Sr. And then he says that they were cleaning the house and organizing stuff for the families. Well, that's very strange. That's very odd. Remember, this is the 19th. This is January 19th that they were talking about. They were supposed to be grieving and going through the loss of one of their closest friends. And they were cleaning up the house and organizing stuff for the families. Chris Klein and Mason Hendricks found a hole in the ceiling, and then they proceeded to go up into the attic to see if anything up there needs to be brought down. God only knows what that means. What would need to be brought down? They weren't moving. The family wasn't moving. They were just organizing things. So I'm not sure what needed to be brought down. But the fact of the matter is, they were up in that attic, which led some to believe that maybe that bullet fragment was planted. But we do have the picture of the master bedroom with the ladder in that closet that leads up to that roof access. So they were up there. This is the 19th. And so the question is, he went on the record by saying that and didn't know that he was putting his foot in his mouth at the same time. Now, the bodies were found the 17th of January of 2015. That's a Saturday. Police and detectives and everything, investigators, were there all day Saturday through the night and into the morning on Sunday, the 18th. The bodies were removed, things were taken out, and cleaners came in sometime that following day, Saturday Sunday or Monday or Tuesday, to do the cleaning. Judy Prochnow has a photo of the truck being there that did the cleaning, the restoration, and because the bodies were there, 3 bodies decomposing for 3 weeks allegedly, I had brought up in the next statement that it was a biohazard because of the smell and the stench and the potential biohazard. And so my next question was, who had what types of air masks did you wear? And why did Klein tell investigators that Dan Sr. was in the house? So that was my comment myself at January 28th, 1:26 p.m., directed toward Mason Hendricks. And then I also go on to say that, remember, this was 1/19, January 19th. The home was professionally cleaned. It says here between the 20th and the 22nd, but they were already there cleaning the house on the 18th, I think, and the 19th. But it didn't end until possibly the 20th or the 22nd. The 19th, already a call came into police for suspicious activity in the house that some neighbor called 911. Klein was in the house. That would still be considered a biohazard. What types of air masks were worn when you 5 were in there? So the question is, this was the last correspondence I received from Mason Hendricks at all. He shut up real quick when I backed him into the corner on this timing. They were in the house. 5 people at least were in the house while the house was, after it had become cleared as a crime scene, but before it was professionally cleaned and given the green light, and before family had a chance to even get there and do anything. They were supposed to be in the middle of grieving. So now we had 5 people there, none of which are Dan Crowley Sr., which was in the notes in the official police investigation. That's why Chris Klein was there. 2 people were in the attic, and the rest were organizing stuff, quote, for the families so they didn't, quote, have to. And that's when they found a ceiling hole right in front of that front door where the kill shot was. So that's the story. That place would have reeked and still smelled horribly after those bodies being removed. And this is 2 days after a large crime scene, like the likes of the city of Apple Valley does not see but once every few years. This is a random thing, and so friends were just hanging out there in the house on the 19th. Now that was the night of I believe the 9th. Well, no, that was the call for 911 came in at 1 p.m. in the afternoon on that Monday. Neighbors heard suspicious activities in the house. Police got there. No one was there. A neighbor had saw a army-painted GMC truck in the driveway, which later proved via Instagram photos that that's Christopher Klein's army-painted Jeep or truck, whatever it was. So the question is, Klein later in his testimony to police admitted he was there. So now we've got him admitting to the police that he was in the house on the 19th. Neighbors call 911 because of all the commotion. 4 other people admit to being in the house. And they find a bullet hole. And they're in the attic. So cleaners found when did the bullet roll out of that fragment, Greg? Was it the 18th?
That was the 20th.
Or the 20th.
20th.
Okay, so this is how it ties together for the listeners out there. We've got Chris Klein admitting to being in the house on the 19th. Mason Hendricks saying him and 4 others were there on the house on the 19th. And we've got the cleaning crew cleaning the house on the 20th, which is a day later. Now that scene would not be cleared to be even open, I think, to the public or even family or friends until that the professional cleaners have finished cleaning the house. If they were there on the 20th, and that's what I think the message was, did they finish on the 20th or did they finish on the 21st or the 22nd? Not sure when, but whenever they finish, that should be the first time anybody would be in that house. We have a big problem with the cleaners rolling up the rug and finding a bullet fragment in that rug on the 20th, which also means that bullet fragment could have potentially been planted by those 5 individuals on the 19th, the day before. It's still not it's a contaminated crime scene by now because these guys are in the house. That's what I'm getting at.
That's right.
Yeah.
The question is, why were they in the house? They must have just very recently put that lockbox code after the bodies were found on Saturday. Police were in there all day Saturday. When did they put the lockbox code on there? Sunday sometime? Maybe for the cleaners to use or the family? And so what was the rush to get into that house the next day?
Yeah.
What were they doing? Why were they all there? And what were they doing? You know, some suspect, and I'm part of this group, that possibly that gunshot was fired on the 19th when they were there, causing the disturbance, resulting in the neighbor to call 911 if someone did fire an empty round, a hollow point round into the ceiling. That later would be used as a narrative to push that was there the whole time. That was the kill shot. Now we know no one was killed on that kill shot that was found in the attic because there was no blood, brain matter, hair, body tissue, brain tissue, or anything on that bullet fragment that was found in the attic. All that was on that bullet in the attic was David's touch DNA, like handling it from his hands, skin cells transferred off, something to that effect. And so there was no a kill shot to the head on a suicide shot using a hollow point bullet through your skull would have obviously brain matter, tissue, blood, all sorts of goodies collected on that way. So if they came in there on the 19th, accessed the code box from Dan Jr., he's the only one I believe who would even know the code, and Dan Sr., both of the Crowleys, and they go over there and invite 4 other friends in. They fire a shot into the ceiling, resulting in a bullet being left in the ceiling that they eventually blame on David Crowley's kill shot. Who knows what they were doing? My question would be, why didn't this come up for police and detectives? At this point, I would have considered all of those 5 individuals as suspects. The fact that they were even in the house before the cleaning was completed. So it all leads back to item 57. And item 57, for the listeners out there, is the very final item put into evidence in this case. That was a bullet found in the attic, as labeled item 57. David's touch DNA was on it, but no blood. Not a single drop of microscopic blood was on that bullet. Someone probably just pointed it into the ceiling, fired a round off. But once again, it had to have been used with some sort of silencer or suppressor, because by this time it was 2 days after a large triple homicide took place in that house, and so the neighbors' antenna would certainly be raised with any strange noises going on.
Yeah, and I have a hard time believing
that's really the crux.
Okay, yeah, and I have a hard time believing that with as big as that bullet hole in that ceiling was in February, that nobody saw that bullet hole in the ceiling on the 17th, the 18th, or even the 19th. I mean, the cleaning crew didn't see it, the police department didn't see it, BCA didn't see it, friends and family didn't see it. Nobody saw it. And it's like, how could you miss? When I forget if it was Detective Bone that went, I think he was the one that went, and he writes in his notes, he says, obvious bullet hole in the ceiling. And it is. As soon as you look at that, it's like, yes, that's very obvious. How could so many people miss it for so long? There's no explanation for that either.
And that was Greg's good point by saying, how did that many people miss it? Now, by this time, it could be the case that the detectives now changed their story because they got a case of the embarrassment case here, and then they started to shove this thing down because they know people were looking into this, and they had themselves missed this bullet hole. Whereas in reality, I don't believe they missed the bullet hole because the bullet hole wasn't there in the opening day. Someone would have seen that. So
right.
The question is now, the Apple Valley Police are facing a conundrum. Do they admit that their entire staff of detectives did not see the bullet hole, which is also probably true, or do they come out and admit that they've been bamboozled by a bunch of guys in their 20s that actually pulled off this crime, and now they even look worse yet? So the Apple Valley Police detectives have found themselves between a rock and a hard place now, because worst case is that they were in on the cover-up. The best case scenario is that they were they just didn't know what they're doing. Now, either scenario there is bad. So, did Gummert, as the sergeant of this detective group, essentially the manager of this department, really feel bad about all the errors they made and kind of wanted this whole thing to go away?
Well, and who could fault them? I wanted to throw this in there. Who could fault the Apple if they? Oh, I could not fault them if they just decided from the get-go that these guys seemed so genuine, that everybody was telling them the truth. It's like you can't fault them for believing them. Yes, it would have been an error of judgment on their part, but it would be understandable. But at this point, where they have just completely shut down, they don't even try to backtrack on their answers anymore. They don't answer any questions. They are ignoring every piece of evidence given to them, and they just are content with staying silent on something they messed up on. And that, to me, is not understandable, and that is not respectable behavior.
And it's not acceptable either.
That's right.
Yeah, not at all.
That's right. I thought it was kind of weird that they go out of their way to compare item 31 to item 57. And I was looking through and I was trying to see they never tested item 31 for blood or anything like that. It was just a fragment. So I always thought that was kind of weird how they came up with that. But and
Yeah.
it's really odd. I mean, one of the only thing maybe stranger than them missing a bullet hole and them missing a bullet is that this bullet does not have blood on it. I think that's all of the other bullets do. Even
And
50,
I would say
53.
I would compare 57 to the bullet found in the basement wall that was fired through the floor of the living room.
Okay.
Right.
That's what I've been calling those a warning shot. It's just fired into the ground. That one probably had David's touch DNA on it as well, but it didn't have any human tissue. I think it would have looked exactly the same as the one from the attic.
Yeah, they couldn't find anything on the one that was in the basement wall. I mean, they couldn't even find touch DNA. They found nothing.
That's right.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, and that's on page 28 of the 40-page BCA report. BCA lab
And Greg,
analysis. Go ahead.
I sent you a screenshot, and it states anything that had human blood on it would state it in regards to this case.
Oh, okay. Is that one of the shots that you sent me here? Or did you just send me?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm trying to find the actual photo that I sent you so that it should be in that group that I sent you, though. And so when you're looking at
yeah, you're right. Here it is.
That one result, or actually it's not a result, is talking about item 57 and what they found on it. And it said no blood was found. However, 57A, they found something. It was a test sample, and they found something, but it wasn't blood.
Right. It was just DNA. They only stated DNA, but no blood. Even on their swabbing test, blood was not detected.
Oh, okay.
So there was no blood on 57 at all.
Right. They say blood was not detected on item 57. However, a sample was collected from item 57 as item 57-1.
57A.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're very clear.
And so that's why I included that one photo for you.
That is a great photo.
Because that's taken directly out of the BCA, the large file.
Yes, and this is on if you're looking at the 40-page BCA lab document, it's on page 26. And let's see, what about 44? DNA profiling was performed on blood previously. Oh no, 45 is the one. That's the basement one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
And DNA profiling was also performed on that sample collected. Blah blah blah. So, DNA profiling. So DNA profiling, was that what was done on item 57?
That's all. Yes, that's all, because that's all they could find. It did not test positive for blood at all. So then they went the next step and looked for the DNA.
Okay. So then I can assume 38, 45, 57, 50, 51, 52 are no blood. Of course, 50, 51, and 52 are not relevant.
Are known samples. Yeah.
38 is from the push keys. Okay, right. So there was no blood found on the gun safe in the master bedroom. Okay. Item 57 is, to me, it's still the biggest one. The biggest one that they can't explain it.
Nope.
That's what bothers me about Kenneth Maines is, I mean, he should see this. He should know this, right?
Yeah, and especially since, the trajectory of that bullet hole in the ceiling, and we've talked about this so many times, but it definitely does not add up with where David would had to have been standing for him to land the way his body landed according to their explanation. I mean, it exited his left parietal. So what did it do? Just do a mid-air turn before it hit the window and decide to go up into the ceiling? It just doesn't make any sense. And they won't explain it. They won't explain their stance. Of course, because it doesn't make sense and they can't explain it, but still, it would be nice if they try.
Well, Sophia, anything else? I know this has been a big issue with you here. What do you think about item 57?
I still believe that it was planted after the deaths to sell the story of murder-suicide.
It's a big risk. It's a big risk going
in
there.
It is, but there's no explanation, no decent explanation for all of them to be in that house before it's cleaned. And then they don't even tell the police about it until February. Here, they're bragging about being in the house and seeing the bullet hole, but they don't bother to tell the police about it. That's one of the first things that Klein tells the police when he talks to them in February, that there was a bullet hole in the floor and he saw a bullet hole in the ceiling.
Does he say?
Yeah, and what I find... Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
I didn't mean...
I was just going to look.
Does
he say bullet?
Well, and on page 95 of the 488-page document, at the bottom, it says item 57, white powder material in mushroomed end, apparent rifling on butt end. Now, if this had gone through anybody's head, I don't care who they were, you would not find white powder material. It would have mushroomed as soon as it hit the skull, not mushroomed once it hit the ceiling. So this didn't mushroom until it hit the ceiling. So what does that tell them? It should tell them, they should be able to logically go, whoa, wait a second. This isn't the bullet that killed David. We don't have the bullet that killed David. But instead, they dug their heels in, they stuck to the narrative, and they're saying everybody else is a crazy nut job. Why? Because we can look at this and go, your notes are telling us different from what you're saying.
And Dan and Greg, who was the one who bought Kamel's gun that was almost exactly like David's? Was it Adam?
There were some gifts and there were some purchases. There was a David
I think
Starr.
I thought at one point it was Danny August Mason, but it's not him. It was, I think, Adam.
And Adam was in the house.
Yep.
It's at the very bottom, Greg, so keep scrolling down when you can.
How far down?
It's at the very bottom of that page you're on right now.
95. Okay, let me go.
Mm-hmm.
And Kamel also had a Springfield.
Yes.
Interesting. So the bullet had similar features to 31, but they did not come out and say that it was exactly like a bullet that came out of the gun that they had in their possession.
Sophia, are you saying that the bullet itself, the fragment, was planted in the attic? They went up there and actually ruffled around some insulation and dropped it somewhere just randomly for the police to find?
I can't say as a fact, but I'm just saying that It's a high probability.
So then,
Oh,
in your estimation,
isn't it? Poor
so
Greg,
then
he's trying.
how
Sorry.
did
I'm
the
sorry.
Sophia? Then how did the hole get in the ceiling? Was that from a gunshot? In your
I'm sorry.
estimation,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
how did the hole get in the ceiling in the living room ceiling? If the bullet was planted, was there still a round fired into that ceiling? Do you believe?
Well, I don't even know if a gun made that hole. They
Fair enough.
tested it for gunshot residue, but there was none.
Oh, I didn't think they tested it. I thought they said they did not test the hole for residue. Okay, you see right there, Greg, where it says item 57, white powder material in mushroomed end, apparent rifling on butt end, right there. So
Mhm.
if it's, so that means the bullet did not mushroom until it hit that, hit the ceiling. So I think that the gun was shot into the ceiling, but not until later, because it has white powder material, which is what they describe, the ceiling powder everywhere else. And they found that same white powder material inside the attic where the bullet fragment landed. But yeah, so if it had hit anybody's head, it would have mushroomed on contact with the skull.
Mm.
So it would have picked up some type of skull or tissue material, not white powder.
Okay, but then how did they? But if you look at item 53, right, that kind of mushrooms, and that's the one that they say was shot through Rania.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It would mushroom upon impact with the skull. This item 50. Okay. Let me start over. Item 57, white powder material in the mushroomed end. So that means that whatever that bullet, when it was fired, it came into contact with the ceiling. It did not come into contact with any body parts. Because if it had come in to contact with David's skull, like they're trying to allude to or pretend happened, then that bullet would have mushroomed upon impact with the skull, and there would be no white material in that mushroomed end. None
Why?
at all.
Why wouldn't there be if it still goes through the ceiling?
Because it would have been mushroomed before it even hit the ceiling. What in that mushroomed end would have been the tissue, the blood, either hair, tissue, brain matter, something else would have been pulled into that mushroomed end. And now, not to say that there might not be any white powder on the fragment, but that's not what they write. They say white powder in the mushroomed end.
Right, but that's the mushroom in is that's how the bullet is found, right? So it's found in that upward way.
When it comes in, no, so when the bullet is fired and it hits something, that top, then mushrooms back on itself. So whatever comes into contact with, it's going to cause that bullet to mushroom. So if it comes in contact with the skull, it will be, what's going to be in the mushroomed end will be hair, blood, tissue, skull, brain, something like that. Now, if it comes into contact with a ceiling first, what will be in that mushroomed end will be what is this stuff called? Like the stucco, whatever it is that they make ceilings out of.
The
That
drywall.
white powder.
The drywall.
Drywall, thank you.
Devil?
That is what is going to be inside the mushroomed end.
Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha. And because if you look at the mushroom end of that one, it does look different. And you can look at the ceiling shots too, and you can see that it's clearly that there's white powder all over that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna look at some of those here. Can't believe I don't have them here. Should have that right here. I will find that. What else do we have here with item 57? What other interesting notes here? I mean, to me, it's definitely the most interesting one, and the one that nobody really wants to talk about. People that made the Eric Nelson's film, they didn't want to talk about it. Everybody who tries to contact us to get some type of a quote or a statement or something, they don't want to talk about it. They brush it off. They act like
Right.
this is no big deal when this is, to me, I still think this is the smoking gun here.
Yeah, I mean, they have not presented in all of their evidence, they did not collect the bullet that killed David. And no casing to fit the fragment, and no fragment that goes along with his the whatever killed him. And it's like, okay, you guys, really?
Yeah, that was a big thing too. How do they connect? I guess you can't really connect the shells to the, to the actual cartridge. But when you look at what they leave with, right? I think they left with like 4 or 5 shells. It did not match up. A lot of the stuff did not match up when they left that house. I don't understand why they. First of all, I don't get why then, because if nothing was lining up, if nothing was matching up, it doesn't make sense for them for one day later to come out and say that David Crowley is they have their suspect and the public is not in any danger, which to me are quite clearly 2 lies, right?
I agree.
They don't have their suspect because they don't have David Crowley. They can't tie anything to him, even though they spend 1 whole year trying to actually do that. I don't see the tie. I don't understand the item 31 compared to item 57 too is just another one that just does not make sense to me.
Yeah.
Now it does have matching features. That is true, and that's clear in the 488 page document. It's hard to really see because we have photocopies, but there are matching features between 57 and 31. But because they're bullets, I would think some of the features they should be matching. Like I would not compare item 57 to 31. I would compare it to 42, to 43, and 44. Possibly 53 maybe, but I mean if you can't tie it to 42, 43, or 44, what the hell are you doing trying to tie it to 31? Because it does tie. That's it. It's just all smoke and mirrors with a lot of this stuff. It's frustrating.
Yeah, a lot of double speak trying to throw people off because most people just would gloss over that. Oh, I don't understand it, so they must know what they're talking about. Right. Yeah, well, what they write shows the complete opposite.
Yeah.
And wasn't 31 just a piece of a bullet?
Yeah.
Just a little fragment?
Just a fragment. Yeah,
so
it's a fragment.
How could they even say that there was matching features?
I don't know. It's a fragment from the living room, and I think it's in the corner. I think it's closest to the south wall.
Okay, and here's what I like to do, and I used to get paid good money for this. Okay, let me read this sentence and see if you pick up on it. Comparative examinations of item 31, a bullet fragment, against test-fired bullets from item 1 and item 57 were performed with the following results. Item 57 against item 31 showed the presence of matching features. This means that item 1 fired item 31. Wait, come back. Come back. You left my page I was reading. Okay, yeah, there we go. So have you noticed? Did you guys catch that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, you don't sound too sure, Greg. So, they compared. They did not find matching matching features with item 31 and the known test-fired bullets from David's gun. But yet they somehow were able to find matching features against item 57.
Right. And somehow
therefore
that
means yeah, so that means that David's gun fired 31, although 31 didn't match anything with the test bullets from item 1.
Right.
So I'm like, really? Okay, you guys. Oh gosh, this is why I read these reports and I cringe. I'm like, do people really not catch what they're saying? It's so blatant. Oh.
It reminds me of that card game with 3 cards, and it's like find a lady, and they're flipping around and hoping that you don't catch the card. Oh gosh.
It's like a
I'm
sleight
not
of
explaining
hand
it right.
type thing.
It's like a magic game.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Sleight of hand.
Yeah, we see that a lot. Trying to see.
Or the shell game. There you go.
Shell game?
That's a better
shell game.
Oh, shell game. Oh. Look at Dan with the big words. Right on.
So Dan knows the game. But I mean, seriously, it's like every time we turn around, and it's like we could spend so much more time just taking this apart line by line, going, okay, this is what you said, but yet your tests show this to be the exact opposite of what you're saying.
It's what I call carefully crafted words, done a specific way to on purpose.
Yeah, it's so funny because
but for what purpose? For what purpose? To
trick people. Well, it's doublespeak. Yeah.
So that is not a case, Greg, that's just done by mistake or poor work or sloppy work. That's an indication if it's carefully crafted words like that done on purpose. Is now you're in the realm of a cover-up. If
Correct.
They were done that specifically phrase that phrase to get them out of it, get them off the hook, to tell you something without saying it, that would be your indication. Because that's not something that they would do on purpose. That's too carefully crafted.
Right.
Too much. It's over the top.
It truly is. And this is why, you know what, if for any young people that are out there, whatever job you're doing today, even if it's not what you think you'll be doing or needing later in life, learn all you can from it. Because I learned how to read documents like that from attorneys that I worked for. Because legalese is known for its doublespeak, left and right. And so I had some really good bosses that were attorneys that taught me how to read between the lines of what is said versus what they really mean. And I had no idea back then in 1979, I'm dating myself, that what I would learn on one of my very first jobs is something I'm now using in 2019.
I was trying to find some of those good shots of the bullets where they do some comparisons. I think I skipped it.
Yeah, you need to go back.
Somewhere around here. So they have around page 176. Some of these comparisons are just ridiculous. And some of the tests that we did too. I guess we should go through the screenshots that Sophia sent too. Kind of look at some of those as well. But let's see. Yeah, the tests fired. A lot of those tests fired. I don't know. It's
kind of hard to see.
They are hard to see.
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
And it would be nice to get some color images. I believe these were color. Maybe these weren't color. I don't know. There's 53 though. Page 182 of 488. And from here, the test fired. So they're comparing a test fire bullet labeled as T2, comparing that to item 53, and they get some similar things. But when they do these test fires, what are they shooting at? How do you really accurately compare a test fired bullet into item 53?
Well, they just shoot into either a gelatin type mold or into a water tank, and then take the fragment out and compare it with what they have.
And they're
Now,
basically
see,
looking at the ridges on the bullet that the
yeah,
gun barrel leaves.
Okay. So here's on page 183 of 488. This is another test fire. This test fire is against item 57, and I guess they're saying this matches. I don't know. Doesn't look that similar to me, but
yeah, it doesn't look like it matches at all.
if they moved it down a little bit,
Yeah,
maybe.
look at that. That does not match to me. Yeah, but then I don't know. I don't know how to read these, but
Right.
if they're trying to prove that it matches up, it's like, yeah, no, it doesn't.
Well, and they always go for that line area, so I wonder where that correlates when the bullet is fired. Here's another one. Okay, so here's the comparison on page 184 of 488. This is where they compare item 57 to item 31, and you can see similar. It is very similar, but I don't understand how that proves that item.
Yeah,
30,
see, I
31
don't,
fired.
and I agree with what everybody else is saying. They're saying the striations don't match. Now, theirs a little bit closer on this one, but up above, yeah. Oh, look, so 57 and 31, they match. But 31 did not match item 1. So it's like, what? What? You guys are crazy.
And 31 didn't hit. 31 is part of the fragment that... No, is it part of the fragment that goes into the basement?
I don't remember where 31 was found.
I'm gonna look that one.
It was over by the bookcase by the window.
Right,
oh, that's right. That's right. Thank you, Sophia.
And that's when they pulled the carpet up. Oh, look at that. Well, so far on our first simulcast here live on YouTube, we are live on YouTube. I haven't had any drops, so I love that. My internet issues appear to be fixed, as long as I'm not using Windows. I don't use a Mac. There is a third option, people. I think it's this. Can't be that. No, it can't be that. It's too small. I'll find it. Where are you, 31? Must have passed it.
It's the one where it has a yoga map, or a yoga mat. Excuse me.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
right by
the
before they pulled the rug back.
Must be in this one here. Let's go find 31.
As a side note, do we know if Detective Gumbert is back on the force, or is he still on his leave of absence?
I think he's back.
He came back. He's been back for over a week.
Oh, really? Okay.
He's back in black.
Well, I'm glad he's back. I, just would hate to think something was wrong, Even though I don't think he's been very nice to me, but still, it's like I don't want him to be sick or anything. That would not be cool.
Of course.
He still owes me a phone call.
He does. He owes me one too.
Okay, here's
So
31.
let's all go on the list.
Let's all go. Okay, so there's 31. This is where 31 is found here. Let's see. Come on. Let's see.
Well, you have a super sensitive mouse, don't
I
you?
know. It's crazy. So that's 31. That is what they're comparing 53 to? I mean, look at that. That's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
There's 31.
Wow.
super tiny.
Man, you're not kidding. It is teeny tiny.
It is. It really is.
Oh, wow. It is. You're so right, Sophia. Look at that. It's just a fragment of a fragment.
Mhm.
Wow.
Just a baby. All right, what else do we got to cover here? Let me go back to some.
Dan's been awfully quiet for a while. Dan.
I've got something. I'm here. I am. In reviewing other cases, I just had notes here written down. In reviewing other cases, the one thing that stuck out for me now, in looking at homicides like this, murder homicides, is one thing I focus on when I look at cases like this is what is left for the survivors. As far as I always see, without fail, a vigil, flowers, candlelight vigil, outpouring of flowers on the front steps, something to commemorate. In this case, it would have been for Comel or Rania. Everyone assumed David did this, so there wouldn't, of course, be anything for him. But there was still none of that, and that still strikes me as odd that there was never an outpouring of the community, neighbor, family, and friends. It was all just quietly hushed under in this case. And that's my other tip-off. I think that there's something goofy here because we never did see mountains of bouquets of flowers for the young child, this young woman, this mother of one. We didn't see. There's no big, piles of flowers and bouquets of flowers and candles lit and people hanging out at the property looking for answers. So that always stuck out for me. And then Greg, like for you, you've got the item 57. For me, it's still Rania's arm missing, being pulled out of the socket.
Yeah,
that's our red
right.
flag.
Yeah, you're right.
An arm cannot be pulled out of its socket, even from a 5-year-old girl, by a dog, a mid-sized beagle mixed dog. How did the arm get pulled out? Why is there a fractured rib just below the armpit of that same arm that's missing? And if the dog didn't eat the humerus, the ulna, and the radius, the 3 major bones, even of a young girl, where are they? Where are those bones?
All right.
They weren't in the house.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know what? And that was something I did specifically ask Dr. Kelly, and I know we haven't talked about him for a while, but I did ask him if a dog could pull that arm out of the socket, and he emphatically stated no. No way.
Can you go
yank
back
on it, tug on it, and pull on it, but not pull an arm off.
Correct.
From
he
the
could not
socket.
take it.
All
Correct.
those strong ligaments and muscles, and there's just no way. So that's our question, and that's one of those that I sent back to Kenneth Maines as well by saying, even you yourself in his report, he says that it seems odd for him that the girl's arm was missing, and it's very strange that a fractured rib would be found as well. And so I'm going to have him go back and say the fact that it's pulled from the socket, it was removed from the socket itself. Impossible.
Yes. And that takes absolute brute force. Yes.
And the fact that it's missing. The dog didn't eat the humerus or the ulna or the radius, digest it, and it's not just missing; it has to be somewhere. So the entire thing is gone, and that broken rib, that fractured of a rib just beneath. Now, the pulling out of the arm from the socket could not have been something that would have been done while Rania was still alive, because those blood-curdling screams would have been very loud. So I think that was post-mortem. She was shot, she was killed, and then they yanked it out later, obviously. So the question is, if David did this, once again, picture David on the stand, committing the crime of murdering his wife and child, why would he take the time to pull an arm off a child and hide it or put it somewhere before killing her? After killing her, and then before killing, why would that take place if there was some pack theory and he was down and depressed about financial reasons? Pulled the arm off of child. And so that's my big thing. For Greg, it's more 57. And I think, Catherine, for you, it's more, what's your heavy hitter?
The absolute
Yours is
skull.
more. And how about that random jaw laying there on a blanket that's been cut into a nice flat surface? That
Well,
maxilla?
yeah, the maxilla. And I don't know what to think about that because the deputy coroner I spoke with said that can happen when someone is trying to break apart the facial bones, that it can snap off cleanly like that. But I don't, I just have to take their word for it because I don't know. But the reality is where's the rest of the skull? It's
Well,
not there.
if someone did it, why was someone trying manually to tear apart the facial bones?
Right, yeah.
So even if that is the case, that doesn't answer a despondent, depressed man who wants to take out his whole family.
Yeah.
So why was there any manipulation of that bone at all? Whether it was cut or pried apart, it's nice and flat, and that's not normal.
Right, and the other thing too is how white that bone is. I mean, it looks, and I don't know, this is just me throwing it out there, but it looks bleached. It looks too clean. There is no, there are no ligaments, there's no muscle left, there is nothing. It's a bright white, which just does not look right.
Very, very odd. Then we've got the strange knife found at the scene with random blood on it from people. And no fingerprints. The entire case is just goofy. Now, Sophia, what's the big thing for you that stands out in this Crowley case? The deleted Facebook posts?
Not only that, but the lying. The lying in regards to this case, to the police, to anybody looking into this case. Why lie?
What would be the motive to lie? Correct.
I mean, if a supposed good friend, his wife and his daughter are found dead, why are you going to be lying to the police about phone calls and text messages? I mean, why be that petty? Especially when it can be double-checked.
Yep. Yeah. I also think that those Facebook posts that were deleted off is David Crowley's personal Facebook wall. While that laptop was in custody of the Dakota County Electronic Crimes Unit, also that's the Shane Klokanos connection. Was that deleted by someone in the police department? Was that deleted by someone who hacked into David's site? David's Facebook page. Now, Sean Wright has said several times that, well, he left his passwords out. Anyone could have seen them. Well, those passwords were not out, and the photos were not released till a year later, when the general public was able to see all of those passwords.
Yeah.
Why would Sean Wright make a statement like that?
Yep.
So,
was
his account hacked? And I mean hacked, even if it's by his brother Dan Jr. or his own father Dan Sr., that account was not their rights to get into that account. Someone hacked in or had access to that account, or it was the police themselves who deleted those posts while that laptop was in their custody and already logged into Facebook. I'm assuming that they wouldn't require a use of a username or a password. It would have been just logged in. And the posts that were deleted were all posts that were making shedding David in a positive light, and posts making him look to the future, forward to the future. Those are the only ones that were deleted.
Yeah. And can I want to jump in here real quick, and thank you, Greg, for showing this. I remembered the maxilla all wrong. In my memory, it was all white. Look at that. It's not all white. You clearly see it's not white.
Yeah,
but in my brain, it was white. So thank you for showing that photo.
It's very, I mean, those teeth are very, very...
Oh, the teeth are amazing.
They are amazing, yeah. Yeah. This whole image here is just, there's a lot of stuff here. This is BCA 4768, and you can clearly see that blanket, and it does, those spots on there. It looks like maybe some old blood. You see some of the
I
David's
don't see any old
wristbands.
blood.
Yeah, if you look down here, I don't know if my cursor, can you guys see you can probably see it. Oh, that's pretty cool.
I see shades and shadows. Oh, you mean
Right
like
down
maybe
here.
on the light blue?
Yes. So on the
Yes.
light
Okay.
blue, you can
Okay.
clearly see it there, but I do
Yes,
think
I see
some of
it
these
now.
other areas, like I'm gonna go to right here, so just maybe point to some of the other possible areas here that I think that there might be some blood, maybe old blood. I think the carpet really makes it difficult here. Any idea what these two bone pieces or whatever these are that are next to the teeth? Kind of in the upper corner there. And this is a lot of hair. A lot of hair.
Yeah. Well, when I
Yeah.
talked to the deputy coroner, they said that those two pieces actually fit on that maxilla,
Mm.
and they do come off cleanly like that. Again, I don't know. I don't know if it's true or not. I can only repeat what they said to me.
Yeah, I also think this might be David's leg here in
Yeah,
the
right
upper
over.
right
Yes,
corner, right?
in the upper right. Correct.
Which is another weird thing if because the blanket is over him.
Uh-huh. It's under Kamel and over David. And then you see her brown sweater on top of him as well. But the dog did that, remember?
Oh, he also touched bones and stuff underneath the blanket too.
Yes.
So
Oh, he did, yeah. And he also put the hair and the debris under the knife. So, hey, that's a really smart dog.
Yes. Very, very talented.
Right?
I don't know what this little blue thing is here in the corner there.
I hope people understand we're being facetious. We are not being serious.
Probably not, but that's okay. You never know. I'm gonna look in some of the YouTube comments. We have a lot of people there right now. Thank you everybody who is listening, who's watching this. This is our first time doing this like this, so yeah, there's a lot of good comments in there. A lot of good researchers. I think that's why that's been the biggest challenge is we have so many great researchers, and they some of them take a couple looks at this case and are like, this case is toxic to the point where they don't even want to they don't even want to look at it. They don't even want to talk about it. And I've had people get angry at me, family and friends for talking about this case. I didn't even know that they even knew about it, and it's just like they just don't want to hear it. They don't want to they don't want to hear about the David Crowley. They don't want to hear that. And I just don't understand it when this is a slam dunk case. It's a clear cut case where you can see that there is something totally wrong here. There's just way too much. Way too much. You can take out, so many different theories. You don't have to worry about rumors or anything. If you just look at these photos, look at these documents, you can clearly see there's no way. There's no way that any of this proves that David Crowley did this. No way.
I agree. Can I address Patty
Please.
Barbie's question
please do.
that's in the chat? It says, what about dental exam references? Now, the coroner, supposedly, Dr. Lilinski, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was her name?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She supposedly compared dental charts of Kamel and David to the maxillas found in the house. And she said that they were able to identify them positively using the dental radiographs. So, but that's
Correct.
all we know.
Correct. Right. That's right. And for their tattoos, right? Tattoos and dental records.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's so funny. My friend who was a deputy coroner said tattoos are faked all the time, and I'm like, please don't give me any more ideas. I don't need more ideas in my head.
Yeah, we're trying to carve it down, right? We're trying to
Yeah.
sculpt it down to whatever it is. Tear it down to its rawest form. To just say, look, we're not trying to tell you what happened. We're not trying to say that we know what happened. We know what didn't happen. And anybody with a brain can see what did not happen. David did not kill his wife and his child or himself. It's it's really clear. There's nothing wrong if people think that. If they want to create conspiracies on that, if they want to create in their own head that they truly think that happened, which I think sometimes family and friends do, because they don't want to have to deal with the fact that after everything that David was talking about, after all the stuff that David was researching, after the movie he was making, after all of that, if he was killed, this would make all of that true. And it's very hard for people to understand that these things do happen. It doesn't mean that the government killed David or anything like that, but things like that do happen. And I think it's, some people are they're scared. They're scared. And a lot of people who are involved in this case, I believe, they are scared too. And they're the ones that I pray for. I pray for them because if they're not willing to admit what really happened here, they're in danger. They can't talk about that. They're not gonna go and say, well, okay, maybe you guys are right. Okay, maybe we can't prove it. They won't even go that far. They're scared. And so I think we just got to keep pushing forward on this. I think we're on the right track.
Yeah, I think we are too.
And I don't care who gets there first. I don't care what gets us there. I do not care. I want to get to the truth. I want to get past phase 1. All right, this is 5 years now. I'm on phase 1 still. We got to get past that, and we can't do that until we can get somebody to really look at this and say, you know what, you guys are right. David can't be proven guilty. Okay, maybe we should change those records. Would that really hurt that much? People are still going to speculate. People are still going to think whatever they want to think. But the fact is, nobody can prove David Crowley guilty. So why is anybody acting like he's guilty? Why are we the bad ones for asking questions, for looking at all of these things and saying, well, wait a minute, you guys haven't looked at this, you haven't considered this. It's frustrating. It's frustrating because from the very start we were told if we just had the information, that would show us everything. From everybody. Family, friends.
And then they give us the information and it doesn't tell us anything.
No.
Or it's secret knowledge.
Secret knowledge, right.
My very favorite excuse in the book. Oh, we can't show you because out of respect for the family. Okay, then why are you touting it?
Right.
If you can't prove your point, then why are you harping it?
Right.
Exactly.
We're showing you the facts. We got the paperwork right here. We're showing it right here on the video.
Yep.
Where's your secret knowledge?
It's a lie.
I know we need to do, I think Dan actually mentioned this once, but we need to do a talk on the Making a Murderer from the Netflix series. Dan and
I haven't
we're
seen
on
that.
opposite ends of that one.
Oh, that'd be great.
But here's the thing, if I was sitting on that jury, and we really should go into this more, but if I was sitting on that jury, even though I believe he's guilty, I could not say he's guilty because they don't have everything that they have as quote unquote proof was all staged. It was all planted. And so by how there are other things that don't necessarily tie that guy to the case. It's other issues in his other relationships that tell me he's guilty. But as far as their so-called evidence, it sucks. as a juror, I would have to go, you guys didn't convince me. I'm not convinced, even though I believe he's guilty, your evidence doesn't show me he's guilty. And so it's the same thing with David, but I don't believe David's guilty at all. There's nothing that shows me, not even the evidence, nothing they say, nothing that we've looked into that even remotely shows David is guilty. But yet, why do they hold on to it?
Yeah, and for the listeners out there, that's a Netflix documentary or a docu-series called "Making a Murderer." There's two seasons, I guess, of it, of 10 episodes each, I believe. It talks about the case next in Minnesota, next to Minnesota here, in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
About a missing young woman, and later
photographer. Yeah.
The photographer was allegedly murdered, killed, dumped in burned up, and the body fragments were found, and they tagged it on this individual who lived nearby and his younger nephew, and both are in prison to this day, as far as I know, for this. And they made a documentary about it, and they have various justice pages as well, trying to basically do what we're doing here, just having people open the door to see the light, not convince anybody. We're not here to do a sales pitch. It's just it's very similar circumstances where nothing makes sense. Things are just odd. Things are not normal. What I find with that Netflix series, Making a Murderer, it's very similar to the Crowley case. The first question when people watch it, they want to find out who did it. It's a big mystery, a whodunit mystery. If it wasn't these guys, and in this case, if it wasn't David, who did? And what I try to focus on when I watch shows like that, or look at the David Crowley case, is it really doesn't matter who did it. You have to narrow down who didn't do it, and then you can get yourself down the right track. David Crowley obviously did not perform this staging and the killings and the arm removal and the Facebook posts and whatnot, all of these ridiculous things. Obviously, he didn't do it. Do we care who did do it, or which person or persons did it? Yeah, it'd be nice to know, but the purpose of the justice page is just to point out the facts that he obviously didn't, and therefore we've got a murderer or a killer or killers on the loose. And what they did to the Crowley family, as horrendous as that is, they certainly wouldn't hesitate to do it again. And so the question is, those people are out there, and whether they're amateurs or professional killers, they probably wouldn't hesitate to do it again. That's the disgusting thing we have out there.
Right.
And then you watch that Netflix case, and you realize that if the wrong two people are in prison, and the real killer is out there, and what they did to that body, and how they desecrated her, we really got problems. And in both cases, it's the police department that's backed up against a wall, fighting and digging their heels in, just to avoid the bad reputation. They don't care about the truth. They don't care about right or wrong or who did it. They are fighting for their lives so their department does not look bad. That's what we've got here with the Apple Valley Police Department.
Right.
They obviously know it doesn't add up, but the question is, why are they fighting so hard? Are they involved in a cover-up, or are they trying to save their reputation? Neither option is good enough for us, the people, the citizens. And I really feel for those who live in Apple Valley. Their taxpayer dollars are going to fund that police department, and they are more worried about their reputation than they are actually protecting and serving, which is their only job to do, is to protect and serve the community. They're not doing any of that, and that's what we're stuck with. That's what we're up against, is trying to shine the light and trying to educate and trying to wake people. We're trying to wake people up and look at the case, and hopefully one day a documentary will be made about the Crowley case to show us. None of us are big fans of David Crowley. We didn't necessarily watch or enjoy his work. This isn't a fan club of the Gray State. This isn't a fan club of David Crowley just trying to harp on the fact that we want to clear his name. Us following the case didn't even know the man.
Right.
Greg knew of him, and it wasn't even a fan. So I didn't know the man from Adam. So none of us have a stake or a dog in the game here, and we're not doing this for our own pleasure. This is an extremely frustrating case to follow, and it's certainly not any fun to do. And it takes us all away from time that we'd rather be spending doing other things. Because it's so sickening, and for me in particular, sickening to my stomach to see what this did. It motivates me to get the word out, try to get people educated, to open up their eyes to what's really going on at some of these things. This isn't necessarily a federal case brought in with hitmen and the CIA and a secret government to do it, although it very well could be. All we know is that it's not some random murder-suicide, with all the overstaging, I'll say.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dan. That was really, you were really on point.
To the point, yeah.
Yeah, and the first thing that people, when they first join on, they automatically think, oh, you must be a big fan, or must have liked the Gray State, or must have been a fan of the project, and it gets people when you say, I didn't know who he was, I wasn't even familiar with the project.
Well, I've gotten a lot of backlash because I wasn't a fan. So it's like, well, why do you care then?
Yeah, you got really hit because you're anti.
Yeah, I'm like anti-Crowley, so.
You are damned if you do and damned if you don't, huh, Greg?
Story of my life, so we're good. I'm used to that.
And so we find ourselves up against the wall on various small things, and that's where the bickering all begins, is on the small things. One in particular is the name of the page, or the group, Justice for David Crowley and Family. When I created that back in 2015, the word family was meant for David, Comel, and Rania only. Not David's siblings, or not his brother, not his sister, not his his father. This is not a page to put them and shed that family in good light, his blood relatives. This is a family only for David, Comel, and Rania. This is not anything to, we're not trying to do something good here for the remaining surviving family. This is not to, make them a feel-good, warm, fuzzy feeling for the rest of the family. What we've got here for suspects and evidence leading back to who's our people of interest does certainly include members of David's family. His father and his brother are certainly included in the pool of suspects in my mind. Did they do it? I don't know. They may or may not have been. But they certainly would have been, or should have been, treated as suspects for what they did and their actions and their behavior before, during, and after the bodies were found. All right, guys, I got to jump off here in about 2 minutes. Anything else to go over for tonight?
I don't have anything else. Do you guys?
No, I don't have anything else.
What I posted on the Justice for David Crowley and Family page just now was a screenshot, a JPEG image of those last two emails, correspondence between Danny August Mason and David Crowley, one on December 9th and a response on December 16th. And we know a week later the bodies were found. December 9th, and I'll read it, David writes to Danny, who's still, from August 1st, refusing to sign that release statement. It says, in deference to your hesitation to sign the GS release document, I give you these verbal guarantees. You will have, number one, full producer credit on the film The Rise, unpaid. It's an unpaid, that's the Rise documentary that did come out later under Sean Wright. He was going to give him a full producer credit on The Rise. And then number two, guaranteed casting as lead role of John Wanick in Gray State series in a paid position. Now, two things are important here in him giving this verbal guarantee. He uses the phrase Gray State series. We already know it was not going to be made a movie. It was going to be a web series or an internet series, or a television series, sorry, a series of some sort. And that's what Mike Boggio said from the producers of the Meg Entertainment Group, a series. So here on December 9th, 2014, for all of you out there who says there was no deal, David Crowley himself is going to guarantee a role for Danny August Mason playing character John Wannick in the Gray State series, and he's going to pay him, and it's a paid position. So he said after that, he says, you will have every opportunity to continue to collaborate, write, and produce episodes. Episodes, plural, with an S. Series, keep that in mind, and retaining your cherished position as a co-creator of the original concept in the public eye. But I will not be able to sign you into any contracted roles until I have your signed release document. I would like to have it by December 16th. There's the deadline, December 16th, after which we would be free to discuss a future with Gray State that's more respectful for your talents as a paid professional. That email was sent on December 9th, and that obviously has legalese written into it that had David, we can assume here, it was in working with his attorney, Adam Gislason, to get this out, saying, we want you to release your rights from the movie. This is not saying I'm pulling the plug on you and our friendship and our business association. He said, I'll still give you the full credit, producer credit in the documentary, and I'll cast you as the lead role in the Gray State series. You'll even be paid for it. All you have to do is sign the document. Danny August Mason refused to sign that document because of a misunderstanding. He thought David was pushing him aside, pushing him out, and cutting him off. And in retaliation, he refused to sign it. Then, December 16th, last email between these two, Danny Mason, buddy, please give me a call about moving forward before I sign the release form. Danny. And that was it. Bodies are found, killed possibly a week later, found 3 weeks after that. So these guys were going back and forth through August, September, October, November, and things coming to a head in December when Danny August Mason, I think, figured that he was being squeezed out. He was giving the short end of the stick, and he was being squashed down by his good buddy. And David once again goes out of his way to say, you will have roles, you will be paid. Just sign the document so we can move forward from the legal perspective of things.
Hey, Dan, can I ask you to clarify something real quick?
Danny August Mason is not the brightest bulb, and he just, I don't think, could figure it out. And David Crowley was the brightest person on that project. He did not surround himself with intelligent, articulate, smart people. And that's what ultimately paid the price. I think the snakes inside his inner circle ended up killing him because they didn't have a clue what was going on. Go ahead.
And you stated, and I just want to clarify and see where your stance is on that, but you just said that a week after December 16th was when they were killed and then the bodies found 3 weeks later. Okay. I don't buy into their narrative on that. Do you believe that?
I agree with you.
Okay.
I was just giving this as a point of reference to the official narrative. This email was done, according to the official narrative, only a week later, the killings took place. So this is, we're trying to look at a timeline to narrow in on when things happened. Now, I also believe that the bodies were probably killed in the month of January, closer to the 10th or 9th, 10th, or the 11th of January. But according to the narrative, yeah, the bodies were found, were killed essentially Christmas Eve or Christmas Day is what they think.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
I find that very interesting because they keep saying that there's no deal. The Eric Nelson documentary, the man did a full documentary on this and said there was no deal. Kenneth Maines is a full-time investigator, says there was no deal. The Apple Valley Police says there was no deal. So the question is, if there was, did the investigators simply not do their homework?
What does Danny August Mason say about that? Does he say that there was a deal? Because obviously it's right here, and we do know that they did talk on the 16th of December. That is in the phone records.
Yep. So he says that Danny August Mason is going down the official narrative. Everything I hear from him is that David was despondent, pulling away from others, looking gaunt, losing weight, not talking, and not engaging with the project, and went down the road of depression.
Okay, I have to say this, and anybody who's listening, do not take this out on Greg, Dan, and Sophia. Danny August Mason is an absolute dork. I mean, the guy, hello, he's right here putting it in writing. There's a telephone record of them speaking, so this means that this email is not forged, because after that there was a phone call. So Danny knows that there was a deal. So he's just an absolute idiot to go on the record to say, I'm going to go with the official record. Artificial narrative, I'm sorry. Wow, what an idiot.
And that's what he says when he's interviewed by Ben Swan, right? I think everybody needs to go watch it. If you have not seen Danny Mason being interviewed by Ben Swan, it raised so many eyebrows. I had so many people contact me like, what is wrong with Danny Mason? There's something wrong with him. He was scared. This guy is an actor. He's a trained actor. He would know.
He's not even very good.
Well, I've
watched him, and the guy sucks.
I wouldn't.
I
might debate
no, he
you
doesn't
on that.
convince.
I might debate you on
Okay,
that.
yeah, we could do that because no, he is, like I said before, he is at best a D-list actor. He's not convincing
Wow, that's
at
harsh.
all. It is harsh because it's the truth. Nobody likes to hear the truth, and I'm telling you, I would never pay any money to see that dude in anything. Not at all. I mean, in his little skits throughout, and even when he's talking on the camera in the Netflix thing that they the jocumentary or sloppumentary, as you call it.
Jocumentary, I like that.
The jocumentary. I mean, you can tell he's trying to pull the wool over everybody's eyes. He's not good at faking a lie.
Yeah, Greg, I agree with you that if anyone gets a chance to watch that Ben Swan interview with Danny August Mason, pull it up. It talks about the Gray State. It's one of the most uncomfortable, awkward things you'll ever see.
Yes.
Todd, are you able to post it in the group?
Yeah.
Because I actually haven't seen it.
Oh, I'm sure you've seen it.
Yeah, watch it, and
it's good.
Watch for the movements, the eye movements, the facial expressions, the body language, and it's take notes if you need to. It's very interesting, and I can't believe he's enough to do that, to put that out there. But he did that interview, and it got a lot of hits and a lot of views, and
that did not help them.
That would be suspect number one after watching that. If I was the Apple Valley Police, I'd say we need to stop in and have a little visit with you after watching this.
Yeah,
he basically put a target on his back after doing that interview.
Yeah.
Now he's left the state, living in Austin, Texas, and subsequently shut down his business called Gray State Universe LLC that's no longer active, and he took off.
Yeah, when you watch it, Sophia,
so look for the people associated with Gray State Project. Yeah, look for those who have left the state and our list is getting large. People who've taken off.
Yeah, and when you watch this, Sophia, it's definitely a must watch.
Okay, Dan.
Bye, Dan.
Bye, Dan.
See you soon, bro.
All right, see you guys.
See ya.
Thank you.
Bye. But definitely watch his micro movements. Just how barely the eye will twitch, or the face a slight smirk, or a slight tilt of his head. Sometimes it's imperceptible unless you're looking specifically for it. And when you start watching it, you'll start catching on to every time he does it, and you're going to go, wow, you suck as an actor. Suck.
I would say
he doesn't even have a Wikipedia page. I found that very odd. For somebody who's an actor, you don't have a page for yourself,
right?
He's got the IDBM, right? He's got the movie.
Yeah, but everybody has the IDBM.
I know. Apparently, I do. I didn't even know I had one.
Ooh, we know a superstar.
Well, I also found it interesting that David didn't even have a wiki page.
Yep.
So, I mean, people can start those on their own, right? I really don't know how all that works. I've never put too much stock into it, but I have used them for sources because they will, they'll give you links to different sources that you can go and research. So, but it's just a public thing, right?
Yeah, I think it is, and you can update it too. But as an inspiring filmmaker, you would think that he had a wiki page and doesn't.
Yeah, I'm actually shocked David doesn't have one. Actually, now that I think about it. But when you watch Danny Mason, watch what he does when they ask him about
Hmm.
that sliding door. When they start talking
Yep.
about the rear sliding door, oh, it's like he doesn't even want to go there. That was a
Yep.
big
It's
thing.
Wow.
I
like
mean,
admitting guilt right there.
there was so much in that kept me going. Like that
Hmm.
interview was a big reason why I'm still researching this case, because I had so many people tell me, "You've got to see this."
Yeah, and can I comment on Inside the Caves
Yeah,
post that they just wrote?
please do.
Um, now they write it was so weird. It made me feel like I was watching the Chris Watts case.
Oh yeah.
Now, Sophia, you saw interviews with Chris Watts, right? That was the guy here in
Actually,
Colorado who killed his pregnant wife and two daughters.
no, I
That's
didn't.
a sad
I'm not a
case.
Oh,
big TV person.
That's a sad
okay.
case.
Well, it was a huge case out here, and I heard a lot about it because my son actually worked with, and not worked with, was is friends with the crew that Chris Watts worked for, and knows the people who own that land where he dumped the bodies in the oil things. I can't speak today, but where they found the bodies. But anyway, I mean, when you watch Chris Watts, I mean, you could tell the guy's an absolute liar. I mean, he's just pulling stuff out of his butt and out of thin air. And
Hmm.
that's how Danny August Mason is with oil tanks. Thank you, Laura Christensen. I'm telling you,
What did she say?
it's oil tanks.
Mm,
I couldn't think of the word. So she's like, it was oil tanks. So thank you, Laura. But yes, so if you when you watch, you have to absolutely watch what they were talking about with Danny August Mason. Watch that, and then go back and watch the Chris Watts interviews, and you will see a very good comparison.
Okay. I think the only thing that I really know about Chris Watts is didn't they catch him on video with
His
the bodies
neighbor,
or
no, his neighbor caught him putting something, but they couldn't tell what it was, into the back of his truck. He'd backed his truck up into the house at like super early in the morning, which was not normal.
hmm
And then when he took the police officer over to his house, he goes, the neighbor says, "Oh, I have video of that morning." And Chris Watts follows him. And then you watch his body movements, and he's like, "Oh,
oh
God, I'm going to get busted. I'm going to get busted." Yeah. It was right
hmm
there that the cops started to realize that he was guilty, but they didn't say anything. They played it really well. The police officers did.
yeah.
They did a great job on that one.
it's too bad we can't get them to look into this case.
I know, right?
Yeah, that's been weird. All the people who don't want to look into it. It's like it's a taboo case. I mean, even and the people that do, weird things happen to them. It's like they're being intimidated.
Hmm.
After Ben Swan did this, I think that was pretty much it. He like you don't really hear that much from him now. I think he's doing his own thing, but um, and then with the Hagman, I don't know if you guys know about that, but that was the guy who actually interviewed David, and David told him that he was not prone to suicides. And
Hmm.
recently, Hagman's son just died. So he overdosed. Not saying that it's tied or anything like that. I don't believe that it's tied, but you know, um, I don't know. It's just there's just a lot of weird stuff like that. I think the
Yeah.
the biggest thing is that so many people just don't even talk about it, right? They don't even want to think about it. They'll talk about Cappy. They'll talk about other people, Seth Rich, other people that were probably killed or whatever. But for some reason, David Crowley is like a no go. That worries me. That really worries me
Mm-hmm.
because we shouldn't be here right now. We should not be
Right.
talking
It's
about this case.
almost like a memo went out, and I'm just
Yeah, exactly.
making a broad statement. I'm not saying a memo went out.
Right.
I'm saying that.
Yes, you are,
Oh,
Sophia.
We got proof.
It's
Your
recorded.
credibility is gone. No credibility for you.
oh, please.
Now you're with me,
The one saying all that.
the
Whatever.
uncredibles.
The Uncredibles.
There we go. I like
Welcome.
that.
Oh, Greg, you're too funny.
Their secret power is their superpowers.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
their secret knowledge is their superpowers.
Yep.
No secret knowledge for you.
Okay, well, guys, I gotta jump off too. My brain obviously is shut down. It's quit working, so I
Join
can
the
even
club.
think of oil tanks. So it's time to get offline.
That's great. And
Well,
you're
I'm
gonna
glad
have
you're on
some.
the road for recovery.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah. I am too, and I know I'm looking forward to it. I know many other people are looking forward to you putting out some more videos. I've been going through
Yes,
some of
I'm.
your old videos. I've been streaming some of your old videos too, so you know.
Oh, good. Thank you. Yeah, I've been watching your new channel, and so I'm gonna be promoting that on my next video. I do plan on getting one out within the next week,
Oh, good.
because it's time. I think it's time to get back into it, and God willing, it'll happen.
Yep.
If
Okay,
you
you
want
guys.
any help, just let me know.
Oh, absolutely, I will. Thank you.
You're
You guys
welcome.
have a great night.
All right, you
You
too.
too.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Well,
And then there
I
were
guess.
two.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
I need to really thank you because you had brought that back. I don't know how it came up. I have no idea how it came up, but you had made me go back and look at what Mason Hendricks was saying. Mason Hendricks is an interesting character too, and character is the right word. I really think it is, because a lot of the stuff that he told me was just. It seemed like it was led to lead me in circles. It was led to just get me to question and question and question, to doubt. It was never to really help me understand why he thought that David Crowley was guilty. It was never that. It was always about casting doubt. And we still see that. We still see where we have a lot of people that are just, they are consumed with just casting doubt. And the whole thing is that this is a program that began when as soon as David Crowley was accused of being guilty, this program started, and we're still seeing this same program. And I just want to let everybody know, and we are going to close down here soon, but I just want to let everybody know, if you do your own research, if you look at all of the documents, if you have the time, if you take the time to look at everything, that's all that I could ever ask. And that's all that I ever wanted. I had people contacting me, telling me that they had this stuff that we now have later on, that they had it way back when, before I had it, before we had it. And it goes back to this secret knowledge. Well, if you just calm down, stop asking questions, don't post on social media, everything, we'll tell you everything. Wait a minute. Why now you're holding the truth hostage? Now there's a ransom for truth. That's not how truth works. So, I definitely kept talking to those people, but at that point, I understood what they were really doing, who they really were, and that they did not want to help us find what the truth was. Their goal was to confuse us, was to cast doubt. It was never to find what the truth was, because we know what the truth is.
I would have to agree. And if you can't stand behind the supposed proof that you have, then why should we take your word for it?
Right.
And so at least we have people who are willing to research this case, and they do it without anything in return, which is, I just have to say that the time and effort that everybody puts into this case, we notice it and we appreciate it. And I just want to thank everybody who continues to look into this case, continues to look at the files and read them and think outside the box. Thank you. Because if only 4 people were doing it, I don't think anything would get done. Or
No,
if it did,
that's
it
right.
would just take us a long, long time. There's so much information to go through. So thank you to everybody for continuing to keep this case alive.
Yep. Because they wanted this case to die. This case was supposed to die out within a couple days, move on to the next one, blah, 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 and everything is good. And there was no way that we were going to let that happen without some clear answers. I couldn't live with myself. I could not wake up every morning. I could not look myself in the mirror right now if I had just turned and just never looked at this case ever again. I would be ashamed. I would be the gray shame. That's what I would be right now. This case,
An innocent man
yeah,
is being blamed for the horrendous murder of his wife and his daughter. And, I mean, she was a beautiful little girl, super, super smart. And his wife was so stunningly beautiful and extremely smart in her own right. And yet she's getting blamed for helping to plan this.
right. Which was a big...
And I just don't think that's fair for any of them.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
And if we could just get to the truth, hopefully they can rest in peace.
Right.
And that's about all I have. I would love for you to post that video, though, when you have a moment.
Oh, yeah, sure. Where do we have it? I think one of my videos has some of that, but you really need to hear you need to watch the whole video of Danny Mason in the proper context. So, without me giving you too much, you know.
Okay.
But, yeah, I don't know. It really bothered me. I mean, at that time, I was trying to really figure out what alternative news media was really good, what alternative news media was bad, who I should waste my time on, who I shouldn't waste my time on, who I should spend my time on. And, God showed me very, very quickly, who I should not waste my time on. I'm not going to waste my time on people that are going to look at this clear-cut case that have stroke, that can get other people looking at this, that can help us reopen this case. And they did nothing. I'll never forgive them for that. So many people. Now, I mean, that's my own burden, and that's my own thing that I have to deal with. But it should have never come to this. We should not be here. We should not be talking about this. This case should be clearly, you know what, we don't know what happened. That's it. That's all we asked for. But so many people, for so many years, who were acting like when the police state was going to take over, when all this stuff was going to happen, they were going to stand up. They're not going to stand up. They're not going to do anything. They're chickens. They're chickens. They're not. I mean, this to me showed me a lot of their true colors. Now, I don't fault the people who just did not have time to really cover this. I don't fault them. I don't fault the people who are like, hey man, you know what, this is how I make my living, blah, 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 I'm just not going to go there. I'm not going to fault those people. They have to deal with that. They have to live with that guilt. They are scarred by this case. Anybody who has ever covered this case and thinks David Crowley is guilty, you are scarred by this case. That's a burden you have to carry for your whole life. I don't have to carry that burden. Sophia, you don't carry that burden. We don't carry that burden because we know that that's not what the truth is. They're lying to themselves. It is one thing to lie to everybody else. If you're lying to yourself and you're okay with that, you got some big, big problems. And that's not people that I want to be tied to. That's not people that I want to deal with. So I stay away from them.
And they have to answer to their conscience, and they have to answer to God eventually.
Amen. Amen.
Well,
all right.
This was a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Amen. Thanks for joining us here. And wow, we've gone about 2.5 hours. No drops, no nothing. I think we've solved all of the audio issues, so I'm hoping we can come back here and maybe the next time we do something like this will be a conference call where everybody can join in. We'll ask questions and we'll try to pay more attention to the chat room. There was a lot of good things in that chat room that was going on, so that will all show up in the live feed video that we will post very soon. Any final words here? You know what? I want to ask you one more question. I do need to go, and I know you need to go here too, but I do want to ask you one more question.
Okay.
When did you get involved with this case?
I got involved December 2016. Yes, at the end of 2016 when the documentary was on Netflix. I finished watching it and I was like, I never had this feeling before. But after watching it, I just said to myself, I was just lied to. And I saw, I don't know if it was mentioned. Yes, it was mentioned in the documentary because you and Dan were in there. I was like, I got to find this group. And so I immediately got on Facebook and checked you guys out and asked to join the group. And gosh, I don't think I really started researching until maybe February. And that's when I started seeing so many things that were not even mentioned in the documentary. And I haven't been able to stop researching since. And it's not, I can't say it's exactly one thing that kept me involved. I mean, I really don't, I guess it's more difficult than I thought.
It is.
There's so many things when it comes to this case. And to me, it's more of a puzzle that you can't solve. And so when you're sitting there cooking or something, you're trying to say, I'm thinking to myself over and over, okay, trying to put the pieces that I can't put together. I'm trying to rearrange it so that it fits, or how to make it make sense, I guess. And so I don't really talk about it with my family and my friends on Facebook. I just don't.
Yeah.
And I might talk about it every now and then. Rant about it is the better word to my daughter, but she just rolls her eyes. And that's about it. I mean...
Yeah, I mean, I try not to talk about people that I know are going to be nervous about it, or if it's going to stress them out, like, or if it's people that I know don't want to hear about it, fine.
Mm-hmm.
I find that a lot of police, just local police and things like that, they're kind of fascinated by that. They're kind of fascinated by this case and by what the police did wrong, because they don't want to do that wrong either. So even if it's just, a case where it's like, hey, you guys, make sure you don't do this, make sure you look up, make sure you don't leave the house without as many bullets as possible, blah, blah, blah. Those simple things, I think, have kind of helped some of the local cops make sure that they don't do what the Apple Valley Police did. And, yeah, some of those things, I think, I mean, but I've never, ever come across any cop, any active duty cop or anything, that has ever said that that was normal. Ever. So when Kenneth Main says that, I mean, it cuts me deep. It really does, because it's like, who trained you? Who trained you to think like that, to think that that's normal, that that's okay? That, oh, this happens. Like, that should be a big, big deal. And I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways.
I mean, you would think that you would want your best when you go into a crime scene, that you want to solve it for the family and to get justice for them.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to Kenneth Maines, I really see it as he doesn't want to burn his horses and his bridges, because he might need them for something else, so he doesn't want to go against that.
Right.
I mean, that's just how I see it, and somebody else might see it a different way.
Sure.
But I think he was just trying to
go
stay
with
in
the
the
flow.
good graces. Yeah, and not burn the bridges. And sadly, Dan is out of $7,000.
Well, yeah, and I keep hearing that, but I don't think he's out of $7,000. I see it as he invested $7,000 into the truth. And everybody who tried to help, they invested into finding what the truth was. Even people who could not ever give one penny but wanted to, they also helped. We all helped. We all helped, just making sure that we're still looking for the truth. And so I still see it as, I don't see it as money lost. That's easy for, I can say that because it's not my money.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't see it as money lost. I really see it as time spent to do the research, to do all of the things that we really need to actually do. And I think Dan has been leading that way. I mean, Dan started this group. He started a Facebook group and then ended up taking over a Facebook page because the guy who started that page didn't want to do it anymore. I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
So Dan started a group and inherited a page, and he's still going for it. And he's doing all of these other things. Dan has his own podcast, and I've talked with him. I'm like, why don't you ever, tell people about your podcast? Why don't you ever tell people about all these other things? And he likes to keep them separate. He really wants to just make sure it's focused on those topics, which is great. But I'm like, man, I mean, Dan does a podcast every Friday live. I don't know how many people know that he does that, where they can listen in, where they can watch in. If I get home on time on Fridays, I'm gonna try to stream it here so people can actually watch it and listen to it, because he's been a big help. He's been the lead researcher on this case since day one. So, okay, my rant is over.
Yeah, we tend to do that a lot, don't we?
There's more to come. But, okay, so I want to thank everybody here for joining us, and we're going to post this, and thank everybody in the chat. And I think we didn't have one drop. We didn't have any problems. The chat room seems pretty cool, pretty clean. Lots of great people there. So I hope everybody can come back next time. And thank you all for joining us. I really appreciate this. The next one we're going to do like this will probably be a conference call. So stay tuned for that. Any final words?
Okay. I just want to thank you and thank everybody else. and I hope that everybody has a great night.
All right. Thank you, everyone.